Jai Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga Jaya Sachinandana Jaya Sachinandana Jaya Sachinandana Jaya Sachinandana Nitai Gaur Haribol 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 Gaura Haribol Jaya Rukmini Dwarkadish Rukmini Dwarkadish Rukmini Dwarkadish Rukmini Dwarkadish Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padaprajak Acharya Asatar Sati Sri Shivan ISKCON BBT Founder Charles Divine Grace A.T. Bhaktivinoda Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Leela Pravisha Om Vishnupad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kahosh Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadvaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopana Shamakunda Radha Kunda Gira Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Brajabhumi Namadam Ki Jai Shri Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Lachal Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai It was beautiful Lordship Shri Shukmini Dwarkadish Ki Jai Shri Shukmini Dwarkanath Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Going back to home, back to Godhead Ki Jai ISKCON Los Angeles Yatra Ki Jai Brihad Malanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai International Food for Life Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol All glories to the seven devotees, all glories to the seven devotees, all glories to the seven devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga Gaur Srila Prabhupada. One more interesting fact on that point, I just saw a study that those who have been twice vaccinated, like myself and so us and most of the senior devotees here, of that group, only about 15% get the virus again. And usually it's from people that they live in close proximity with. So if you get vaccinated twice, there's a very, very small chance that you'll get reinfected. So we will continue reading from teachings of Lord Chaitanya, but before we do that, today is the disappearance of Madhavendra Puri, who's obviously intimately connected with Lord Chaitanya. So we'll say a few words, but actually in this introduction that we're reading, it has already been mentioned that before Lord Chaitanya comes, he sends his confidential servants like Madhavendra Puri and Ishwara Puri and his expansions, Advaita, etc. So Madhavendra Puri is an integral part of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. He did so many wonderful things. As you know, he actually went to Vrindavan before the Goswamis did and started finding the holy places. We know that he had that dream where Gopal appeared to him and told him to excavate him. And then he was installed on Govardhan Hill and he performed the first Anakut, or you could say Govardhan Puja. So many wonderful pastimes, but in relation to Lord Chaitanya, Madhavendra Puri, was the guru of Ishwara Puri, who then became Lord Chaitanya's guru. And it is said that he is the one who first started this mood of worshiping Radha Krishna in separation, or gave that rasa. It was not prominent before him. And when he was about to leave this world, as you know, he was being attended by Ishvara Puri very intimately. And then this other disciple, Ramachandra Puri, came and made a grave mistake. Before leaving the world, Madhavendra Puri was constantly chanting one verse. You'll find this verse in the 4th chapter of the Adi Lila. I believe it's text 147, if I remember correctly. Ai dina dajanata he, maturanata kadava lokshase. Hridayam tvad alaksha kataram, daita brahmita kim karomyaham. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has said that of all the Vaishnava literatures, all the verses in all the Vaishnava literatures, this is the most important, the topmost verse. And it's stated that this verse was recited by Srimati Radharani, and she inspired Madhavendra Puri to meditate on this verse. Whenever Lord Chaitanya heard this verse, even just a couple of words from this verse, he would go into ecstasy. So what the verse is saying, this is what Madhavendra Puri's meditation just before leaving his body, that, O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Mathura, when will I see you again? Because of not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. What shall I do now? So this was his meditation, simply meditating on Krishna in separation, not seeing Krishna. So nobody can imitate this kind of ecstasy. It's stated that only Srimati Radharani, Lord Chaitanya, and Madhavendra Puri can really appreciate the import of this verse. But we should take note of the fact that we have to progress to the point of feeling like this somehow, not as deep as Madhavendra Puri, probably not in this lifetime, but we should get to that point of meditating on the Lord and feeling separation from the Lord, or at least feeling separation from the Lord's Maha, which is all right. Anything related to Krishna, if you feel separation from that, the devotees, the Mahaprasadam, the temple, the community, that deepens our appreciation and brings out, starts to crack the hard heart that we have. Because this is why we stay in this material world. We're hard-hearted. The event in Boulder, Colorado shows you that. How can any human being go home and get a gun and go into a supermarket full of strangers and kill 10 people? How hard can your heart be? So this is what keeps us in the material world. We become hard-hearted. And so by attraction to anything to do with Krishna, chanting his holy name, taking his prasadam, associating with his devotees, living in his temple, doing any kind of service, anything we become attracted to and attached to helps to break that stone-heartedness. All right, so let us continue with our reading from Introduction of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. The Vedas inform us that beyond this cosmic manifestation, there are extensive planets and the spiritual sky. This material manifestation is regarded as only a small portion of the total creation. The material manifestation includes not only this universe, but innumerable others as well. But all the material universes combined comprise only one fraction of the total creation. The majority of the creation is situated in the spiritual sky. In that sky, innumerable planets float, and these are called Vaikuntalokas. In every Vaikuntaloka, Narayana presides in the form of his four-armed expansions, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva. So why do we need all this information? Why do we need all this information? Why not just jump right into Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, his childhood pastimes, his boyhood? It's the same reason why we have 9 cantos before we get to the 10th canto. If we don't appreciate who this personality is, then we take everything cheaply. We hear that, we see he's playing with a snake here, and we don't understand what's going on. That this is the Supreme Personality of God, and that snake is Ananta Shesha. And we don't understand the depth of what's happening if we don't hear these more philosophical presentations. As stated before, the material universes are manifested by the Lord in the form of Mahavishnu. Just as a husband and wife combine to beget offspring, the Mahavishnu combines with his wife Maya, or material nature. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna states, Sarva yonishu konteya murtayak sambhavantiya tasam brahmahadionir ahang bija pradapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. On the one morning walk that I went with Prabhupada, I asked about this Immaculate Conception. Whether you're raised in Catholicism or not, you've heard that Mary gave birth to Jesus Christ without touch of a man. It was an Immaculate Conception. So I brought up that point to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, but there has to be a father. So in this case, God is the Father. As Krishna says here, He's the Father of all living beings. He said a woman cannot give birth to a child without touch of a father. The father has to be there. So maybe it was not her husband, Joseph, but you can say it was God, but there had to be a father. So this point is being made here, that Krishna is the Father of everyone. Vishnu impregnated Maya, or material nature, simply by glancing at her. This is the spiritual method. Materially, we are limited to impregnate by only one particular part of our body. But the Supreme Lord, Krishna or Mahavishnu, can impregnate any part by any part. Simply by glancing, the Lord can conceive countless living entities in the womb of material nature. The Brahma Samhita also confirms that the spiritual body of the Supreme Lord is so powerful that any part of that body can perform the functions of any other part. We can only touch with our hands or skin, but Krishna can touch just by glancing. We can only see with our eyes. We cannot touch or smell with them. Krishna, however, can smell and also eat with his eyes. When foodstuffs are offered to Krishna, we don't see him eating, but he eats simply by glancing at the food. We cannot imagine how things work in the spiritual world where everything is spiritual. So this is very important. We have to accept that when we offer something to Krishna properly, he eats it with his eyes, and therefore the bhoga becomes prasadam. And very, very appealing and attractive. We are all attracted. You know, most of you here, I'm sure when you go home, you can probably cook better than the cook who made the offering. You can make better chapatis or better sabji, but somehow or other you always want what comes off the altar. I told a story before in Potomac. I used to help serve the Sunday feast, and there was one Indian gentleman who always stand next to me. And so we would serve together, and this went on for quite some time. And then one Sunday he said to me, Prabhu, can I ask a question? I said, sure. He said, we can't figure out why we like your prasadam so much. He said, all of us Indians, we can cook better than you. So why do we like your sabji, dal, rice, chapatis so much? So I told him, it's because it's offered to Krishna. Krishna has accepted it, and therefore the taste, you're tasting Krishna's mercy. It's not ordinary anymore, and that's why you like it. So, when foodstuffs are offered to Krishna, we don't see him eating, but he eats simply by glancing at the food. We cannot imagine how things work in the spiritual world where everything is spiritual. It is not that Krishna does not eat or that we imagine that he eats. He actually eats, but his eating is different from ours. Our eating process will be similar to his when we are completely on the spiritual platform. On that platform, every part of the body can act on behalf of any other part. Vishnu does not require anything in order to create. He does not require the goddess Lakshmi in order to give birth to Brahma, for Brahma is born from a lotus flower which grows from the navel of Vishnu. The goddess Lakshmi sits at the feet of Vishnu and serves him. In this material world, sex is required to produce children. But in the spiritual world, one can produce as many children as he likes without having to take help from his wife. Because we have no experience with spiritual energy, we think that Brahma's birth from the navel of Vishnu is simply a fictional story. We are not aware that spiritual energy is so powerful that it can do anything and everything. Material energy is dependent on certain laws, but spiritual energy is fully independent. Brahma is born from the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who is but a partial manifestation of the Mahavishnu. Countless universes reside like seeds within the skin pores of the Mahavishnu, and when he exhales, they all are manifest. In the material world, we have no experience of such a thing, but we do experience a perverted reflection in the phenomenon of perspiration. We cannot imagine, however, the duration of one breath of the Mahavishnu. For within one breath, all of the universes are created and annihilated. Lord Brahma only lives for the duration of one breath, and according to our time scale, 4,320,000,000 years constitute only 12 hours of Brahma, and Brahma lives 100 of his years. Yet the whole life of Brahma is contained within one breath of the Mahavishnu. Thus, it is not possible for us to imagine the breathing power of the Supreme Lord. That Mahavishnu is but a partial manifestation of Krishna. I think the record for humans in terms of time between breaths is about 5 minutes. There are some free divers, they dive down, they go pretty deep down on one breath. And I think the record is about 5 minutes, but that's nothing compared to Mahavishnu. One exhalation and inhalation is the lifetime of Brahma. Continuing. Thus, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami discusses Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Sri Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Lord Nityananda as Balaram, the first expansion of Krishna. Advaita Acharya, another principal disciple of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, is accepted as an expansion of the Mahavishnu. Thus, Advaita Acharya is also the Lord, or more precisely, an expansion of the Lord. The word Advaita means non-dual, and his name is such because he is non-different from the Supreme Lord. He is also called Acharya, teacher, because he disseminated Krishna consciousness. In this way, he is just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Although Chaitanya is Sri Krishna himself, he appears as a devotee to teach people in general how to love Krishna. Similarly, Advaita Acharya appeared just to distribute the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. Thus, he is also the Lord incarnated as a devotee. Krishna is manifested in 5 different expansions, and he and all of his associates appear as devotees of the Supreme Lord in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Nityananda, Advaita Acharya, Gadadhara, Srivas, and others. In all cases, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the source of energy for all his devotees. Since this is the case, if we take shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the successful execution of Krishna consciousness, we are sure to make progress. One devotional song by Narottam Das Thakur states, "My dear Lord Chaitanya, please have mercy upon me. There is no one who is as merciful as you. My plea is most urgent because your mission is to deliver fallen souls, and no one is more fallen than I. I beg priority." So which song is that? Who knows? No. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Kara Mohari Toma Binat Kedayalu. That's the one. All right, continuing. The author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, was an inhabitant of Vrindavan and a great devotee. He had been living with his family in Katwa, a small town in the district of Burdwan in Bengal. His family also worshipped Radha Krishna, and once, when there was some misunderstanding amongst his family about devotional service, Krishnadas Kaviraj was advised by Nityananda Prabhu in a dream to leave home and go to Vrindavan. Although he was very old, he started out that very night and went to live in Vrindavan. While he was there, he met some of the Goswamis, principal disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was requested to write Chaitanya Charitamrita by the devotees of Vrindavan. Although he began this work at a very old age, some say he was in his 90s already, even older than you, Maharaj. By the grace of Lord Chaitanya, he finished it. Today it remains the most authoritative book on Chaitanya's philosophy and life. When Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was living in Vrindavan, there were not very many temples. At that time, Madan Mohan, Govindaji, and Gopinath were the 3 principal temples. As a resident of Vrindavan, he offered his respects to the deities in these temples and requested God's favor. Quote, "My progress in spiritual life is very slow, so I'm asking your help." End of quote. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas first offered his obeisances to Madan Mohan. So who is the Acharya who is associated with Madan Mohan? Yes. Jaya Radha Madana Mohan, Sanatana Pranana Hey. So Prabhupada told a story about Sanatan Goswami and Madan Mohan. I think it was right here. I heard it the first time, 75. Prabhupada is telling the story that Sanatan Goswami was elderly at the time. He was keeping this Madan Mohan deity. And he would just offer him every day. He would take some flour, mix it with water, put it in the fire, and then take it out and offer. That's called bada. So every day he was offering these badas. And one day, Madan Mohan said to him, "Sanatan, can you at least give me some salt?" So Sanatana Goswami said, I'm an old man. Today you'll want salt, tomorrow you'll want something else. Please just be satisfied. So Prabhupada laughed. He said, Sanatana trapped him. There's nothing he could do. He could just have to be satisfied with those vadas. So, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas first offers his obeisances to Madan Mohan Vigraha, the deity who can help us progress in Krishna consciousness. In the execution of Krishna consciousness, our first business is to know Krishna and our relationship with him. To know Krishna is to know oneself, and to know oneself is to know one's relationship with Krishna. Since this relationship can be learned by worshipping Madan Mohan Vigraha, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami first establishes his relationship with him. When this is established, Krishnadas begins to worship the functional deity, Govinda. And who is associated with Govinda? Rupa Goswami, yes. Govinda resides eternally in Vrindavan. In the spiritual world of Vrindavan, the buildings are made of touchstone. The cows are known as Surabhi cows, givers of abundant milk, and the trees are known as wish-fulfilling trees, for they yield whatever one desires. But one has to be careful what one desires. There's that story of this poor man who heard that the trees in Vrindavan are desire trees. If you go there, you just sit down and anything you ask for will come. So he decided, well, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing anyway. So he trekked all the way to Vrindavan, sat down under the desire tree and said, I am hungry. I want a big feast. Samosa, kachori, and he named everything he wanted. And sure enough, boom, everything came. So he started eating and eating and eating. And then what happens after you eat a lot? He fell asleep. So he woke up in the dark, and he was, not familiar. He's not from Vrindavan, what to do, where to go. He said, oh, I hope there's no tigers. Immediately, a tiger came. Because he was thinking tiger under the desire tree. So you have to be very careful what you ask for under those desire trees. In Vrindavan, Krishna herds the Surabhi cows, and he is worshipped by hundreds and thousands of gopis, cowherd girls who are all goddesses of fortune. When Krishna descends to the material world, this same Vrindavan descends just as an entourage accompanies an important personage. Because when Krishna comes, his land also comes. Vrindavan is not considered to exist in the material world. Therefore, devotees take shelter of the Vrindavan in India, for it is considered to be a replica of the original Vrindavan. Although one may complain that no kalpavriksha wish-fulfilling trees exist there, when the Goswamis were there, the kalpavriksha were present. It is not that one can simply go to such a tree and make demands. One must first become a devotee. The Goswamis would live under a tree for one night only, and the trees would satisfy all their desires. For the common man, this may all seem very wonderful, but as one makes progress in devotional service, all this can be realized. Vrindavan is actually experienced as it is by persons who have stopped trying to derive pleasure from material enjoyment. Quote, when will my mind become cleansed of all hankering for material enjoyment, so I will be able to see Vrindavan? End of quote. One great devotee asks. The more Krishna conscious we become and the more we advance, the more everything is revealed as spiritual. Thus, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami considered Vrindavan in India to be as good as the Vrindavan in the spiritual sky, and in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he describes Radharani and Krishna as seated beneath a wish-fulfilling tree in Vrindavan on a throne decorated with valuable jewels. There, Krishna's dear friends, the cowherd boys and the gopis, serve Radha and Krishna by singing, dancing, offering betel nuts and refreshments, and decorating their lordships with flowers. Even today in India, people decorate thrones and recreate the scene during the month of July. Generally at that time, people go to Vrindavan to offer their respects to the deities there. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami maintains that the Radha and Krishna deities show us how to serve Radha and Krishna. The Madan Mohan deities simply establish that I am your eternal servant. With Govinda, however, there is an actual acceptance of service, and therefore he is called the functional deity. The Gopinath deity is Krishna as master and proprietor of the gopis. He attracted all the gopis or cowherd girls by the sound of his flute, and when they came, he danced with them. These activities are all described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. These gopis were childhood friends of Krishna, and they were all married, for in India the girls were married by the age of 12. The boys, however, are not married before 18. So Krishna, who was 15 or 16 at the time, was not married. Nonetheless, he called these girls from their homes and invited them to dance with him. That dance is called the Rasa Leela dance, and it is the most elevated of all of Vrindavan pastimes. Krishna is therefore called Gopinath because he is the beloved master of the gopis. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami petitions the blessings of Lord Gopinath. Quote, may that Gopinath, the master of the gopis, Krishna, bless you. May you become blessed by Gopinath. End of quote. Just as Krishna attracted the gopis by the sweet sound of his flute, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita prays that he will also attract the reader's mind by his transcendental vibration. It is the purpose of this book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, to transmit the essence of that vibration in an easily readable summary study. Srila Prabhupada's Introduction to TLC, Ki Jai. So, what time is it? Yeah, I guess we can go on for another 5 minutes or so. So as we know, when the Mughals attacked Vrindavan, these original deities were moved to Jaipur. How many of you have been to Jaipur? Yeah? So you went, I'm sure you went to see Gopinath and Govindaji. Yeah. And we have, well, the only time I've been there, the last time I've been there, I should say, the temple was on Ajmer Road, but I read recently that they opened a bigger temple somewhere else, so I haven't seen this new ISKCON temple in Jaipur. Srila Rupa Goswami, the younger brother of Sanatan Goswami, went to Prayag, the modern city of Allahabad, with his younger brother, Vallabha. When the two brothers heard that Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was staying there, they both became very happy and went to see the Lord. At that time, the Lord was on his way to visit the temple, Bindu Madhava. On the way to the temple, the Lord was chanting and dancing, and thousands of people were following him. Some of these people were crying, and some were laughing. Some were dancing, and some were singing, and some were falling on the ground, offering obeisances to the Lord. In all cases, all of them were roaring the holy name of Krishna. It is said that in spite of being at the confluence of the rivers Ganges and Jamuna, Prayag was never flooded until the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at which time the city was overflooded by love of Krishna. The two brothers, Rupa Goswami and Vallabha, stayed aloof in an uncrowded place and witnessed the great crowd and wonderful scene. When the Lord danced, he raised his arms and shouted, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. The people all about him were astonished to see his wonderful activities. After visiting the temple, the Lord accepted prasad, food offered to the deity, at the house of a Deccanist southern Brahmana. While at the Brahmana's home, the Lord was visited by Rupa Goswami and Vallabha. From a distance, the two brothers fell down on the ground to offer obeisances, and they chanted many Sanskrit verses from the scriptures. When the Lord saw Rupa Goswami and offered obeisances before him, he became very pleased and asked him to get up. The Lord then informed Rupa Goswami of the causeless mercy of Krishna upon him, for Krishna had just delivered him from a materialistic way of life based simply on pound, shillings, pence. The Lord accepted the two brothers as his own devotees, and he cited one verse from the scriptures which stated that it is possible for a Brahmana who has studied the four Vedas to not be accepted as a devotee of the Lord, and that a pure devotee could come from a very low family and yet be accepted by him. So that verse is Sat Karma Nipuno Vipro Mantra Tantra Visharda A Vaishnava Guru Nasasyat Vaishnava Swapacho Guru. So the point Lord Chaitanya is making is that yes, you could take birth in a Brahmin family and be very restrained. As I heard Jayadvaita Swami say one time, they're trained to light fires this way and throw water that way. But if you're not a devotee of the Lord, a Vaishnava, Guru Nasasyat, you cannot become Guru. You cannot become spiritual master. Whereas on the other hand, Vaishnava Sapacho Guru. Vaishnava could be born in a very low family. The lowest family from Vedic conception is the family of dog eaters. So you could be born in such a family, but if you take to Vaishnavism wholeheartedly, surrender to the Lord, then you can become Guru. Then the Lord embraced the two brothers, and out of his causeless mercy touched their heads with his lotus feet. Being blessed in this way, the brothers offered prayers to the Lord in their own words. The prayers indicated that Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Krishna himself, that he had assumed the form and fair complexion of Chaitanya, and was thus known as Gauranga, the Golden One, and that he was the most munificent incarnation of Krishna because he was distributing love of Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami also quoted one verse which was later found in the book Govinda Lilamrita. Yo jnanamatang bhuvanam dayalur ulagayan apyakarot pramattam. So prema sampat sudayad bhuteham Sri Krishna Chaitanyam amung papadye. Which means, let me surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most merciful personality of Godhead. He delivers those souls who are merged in ignorance and offers them the highest gift, love of Krishna, and thus makes them mad for Krishna consciousness. We'll do one more paragraph. After this incident, Balabhabhata invited the Lord to go to the other side of the Ganges, and the Lord went. From that moment on, wherever the Lord went, Rupa Goswami would follow him and stay with him. Because the Lord felt inconvenience in crowded places, he asked Rupa Goswami to accompany him to a place on the banks of the Ganges known as Dashashwamedha Ghat. For 10 days, he instructed Rupa Goswami about the truth of Krishna, the principles of devotional service, and the transcendental relationship with Krishna. All of this was described in full detail so that in the future Rupa Goswami could distribute this science of Krishna in his book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Indeed, Srila Rupa Goswami described this incident in the first verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in which he speaks of the causeless mercy of the Lord upon him. Srila Rupa Goswami ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah. How do you know? How do you? He's questioning whether or not the man who sat under the tree and desired the food, he can understand that part, but he couldn't understand why was he really desiring to have a tiger. But I'm saying, you don't know that. That's the way the story is told. He expressed fear of tiger. So he was meditating on tiger. And the point is with the desire tree, it's not that you have to express, oh my desire tree, please give me such and such. No, the desire tree is conscious. More conscious than you are. Because we sometimes think we know what somebody's thinking, right? We look at somebody and we think we know what they're thinking, but we could be completely wrong. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was riding on the subway in New York and just in daydream, just looking straight ahead, not looking at anybody. And this young lady thought I was looking at her. She said, well, you're looking at me, why don't you say something? I wasn't looking at her. Completely daydreaming, just looking ahead. So sometimes we think we know what somebody's thinking, but we don't know. But the desire tree, they're spiritual, they know. So that desire tree sent a tiger because that guy was meditating on a tiger. All right, one more, then we should go. There's a special breakfast. I don't want you to be late for breakfast.
Explain how, in a purport, is explain you was reading how in spiritual worlds, people can produce many children. So I was just wondering, is this some statement they're still doing there? And you can be there, and if you want to have children, you can have spiritual children.
Did everybody hear that? I knew somebody would ask about that. In the presentation, introduction, Prabhupada said that in the spiritual world, a man doesn't need sex life to produce children. He can produce as many children as he wants. But he doesn't say that he does produce. Because in the spiritual world, there's no birth or death. So there's no question of a child taking birth. Everybody who's there is existing eternally. So it's not that a man desires to have children and a child just pops up. There's no birth there.
Exactly explained then they can produce.
They can.
They didn't say they doesn't produce.
He doesn't say that they do. He said they can.
They can, so there is possibility. This is my question.
Yeah, that's the point. The point Prabhupada is making is that the spiritual world is very potent and things don't happen there the way they happen here.
Yeah, I know.
So if you want a child here, you have to do it the old-fashioned way. But in the spiritual world, he said, if a man wants children, he can produce without doing that. He doesn't say that they do that there. Because again, we know in the spiritual world, there's no birth. There's no death, and that means also there's no birth. So it's not that children are being born, and that doesn't happen. Everybody's there. What happens sometimes is that by misuse of your free will, somebody disappears and goes to the material world for some time. And then when they come back, it's stated that it's almost just like a moment went by. You could be in the material world for zillions of years. But when you finally make it back, it's just like you were gone for a moment. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Haribol.